The envelope, thick and slightly faded at the corners, was my secret ritual. Every month, on the Friday after payday, I'd take it from the back of my filing cabinet. Inside were the passbooks for 3 separate college savings accounts, one for each of our children. The numbers printed inside were more than just digits. They were promises. They were late nights at the office, skipped vacations, and the quiet hum of a budget spreadsheet that was my nightly Bible. They were the sound of Sarah's laughter as she practiced cello and the sight of Liam's intense focus as he built elaborate Lego castles. They were the future, meticulously bricked together, one sacrificed dollar at a time. I remember the day we opened the first one for Emily, our eldest. She was just a blur of pink in a swaddle blanket, and the financial advisor's office felt impossibly large and adult. "Start early," the man in the crisp suit had said, "and compound interest will do the heavy lifting." I took those words as gospel. My own education had been a patchwork of scholarships, grueling part-time work, and suffocating loans. The weight of that debt was a ghost I was determined to never let haunt my children. So, we built. My bonus 1 year didn't go towards the new deck we talked about. It went into the 529 plan. Every birthday check from grandparents, every cash gift from holidays was dutifully split and deposited. I'd come home tired from a double shift, my back aching, and Claire would kiss my cheek and say, "The kids won't ever know how hard you worked for this." And I'd smile, because that was the entire point. Their ignorance would be my success. They would step onto a university campus unburdened, their choices wide open, their potential limited only by their ambition, not their bank account. I trusted Claire implicitly with our dream. She handled the day-to-day finances, the grocery bills, the utility payments. It was a partnership. I brought in the larger chunks. She managed the flow. I'd show her the growing balances every few months, a shared moment of pride. "Look," I'd say, pointing to the screen. "That's Sarah's freshman year." She'd smile, a quiet, knowing smile, or so I thought. I believed we were looking at the same horizon, standing on the same foundation, building the same castle in the sky for our 3 beautiful children. It was a dream woven from sacrifice and love, a tangible testament to the family we'd created. It felt unshakable, a fortress guarding their tomorrows. I never imagined the person I trusted to guard the gate would be the one to hand the keys to a snake oil salesman and watch, with hopeful eyes, as he burned it all to the ground. The trigger was a piece of mail, a glossy perfume brochure for a luxury sedan addressed to me. "You've earned it," the headline screamed. A bitter laugh escaped me. Earned it. We drove a minivan with a persistent rattle and a dent in the rear bumper I'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. I was about to toss it into the recycling when a perverse curiosity struck me. What did the payment on a car like that even look like? It wasn't about the car. It was about the fantasy. And for a moment, I indulged it. I logged into our primary banking portal, the one Claire primarily managed, just to confirm the absurdity of the idea. The checking account balance was normal, hovering where it usually did before the mortgage payment cleared. My mouse hovered over the Accounts tab. It was force of habit, a comforting tick. I clicked. There they were. Emily's college, Sarah's college, Liam's college. My 3 pillars of pride. I clicked on Emily's. The page loaded, and my world stopped. The balance wasn't the robust 5-figure sum I expected. It was $412.18. A hollow pit opened in my stomach. A glitch, my mind insisted. A frantic, desperate prayer. A system error. My hand, suddenly cold and clumsy, navigated to Sarah's. $412.18. Liam's. $412.18. A wave of nauseating heat washed over me. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. Each account had the same pitiful remnant. I fumbled for my phone, my vision tunneling. The call to the bank was a blur of automated menus and strained patience until I finally reached a human. "I'm seeing a discrepancy with my savings accounts," I said, my voice unnaturally calm, a thin veneer over sheer panic. I read off the account numbers. I heard the soft clack of a keyboard. "Yes, sir. I see a series of electronic transfers over the last 6 weeks. The most recent was a week ago for the remaining balance in each, bringing them down to the current minimum to keep the accounts open." "Transfers to where?" The veneer cracked. "To your joint checking account, sir." My blood ran cold. Our joint account, the one Claire managed. Can you, can you read me the amounts? As the customer service agent read off the figures, $5,000, $7,500, $10,000, a ledger of devastation scrolled in my mind. Each number was a semester's books, a year of dorm meals, a down payment on a future, all siphoned away. The total was a number that made me physically dizzy. It was all of it. Every single dollar we'd saved for 18 years. Gone. I thanked the woman, my voice a hollow monotone, and hung up. I sat at the kitchen table, the polished wood cool under my palms. The house was silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator. I could hear the ghost of my children's laughter from the backyard, a sound that now felt mortgaged. The back door opened. Claire walked in, her cheeks flushed from gardening, a smudge of dirt on her forehead. She smiled when she saw me. "Hey, you're home early." I couldn't speak. I just turned the laptop screen toward her. The three accounts, with their three identical pathetic balances, glowed in the dim light of the kitchen. Her smile didn't fade. It just shifted. It became something else entirely. Not guilt, not horror, but a radiant, feverish excitement. "Oh," she said, her eyes lighting up. "You saw. I was going to surprise you once it was all finalized. Don't worry, honey. I invested it." The word hung in the air between us, slick and poisonous. Invested. For a moment, my brain simply refused to process it. The sheer, catastrophic wrongness of it short-circuited my anger, leaving only a blank, buzzing confusion. "You... what?" "I invested it," she repeated, her voice bubbling with an energy I hadn't heard in years. She dropped her gardening gloves on the table and came around to my side, as if we were about to look at vacation photos together. "It's this incredible opportunity, Mark. It's called Aurasphere. It's a holistic wellness collective, but it's also an empowerment platform. The ROI is insane." She spoke in a torrent of buzzwords and jargon. Unilevel compensation, breakaway leg, generational wealth. Each term was a nail hammered into the coffin of our children's future. My disbelief curdled, hardening into a cold, sharp knot of rage in my chest. "You invested the kids' college fund," I said, my voice low and dangerously flat. "All of it in a collective?" "It's not a collective. It's a... Oh, you just have to listen to the webinars," she said, brushing my tone aside with a wave of her hand. "I use the money to buy the top-tier executive starter kit. That puts me at the platinum level immediately. For every person I recruit, I get a percentage of their buy-in and then a percentage of their recruits. It's a snowball effect, Mark. I was trying to make us rich." The anger finally broke through, hot and blinding. "Rich!" I roared, slamming my hand on the table so hard the laptop jumped. "We were already secure. We had a plan. That money wasn't for us to get rich, Claire. It was for them to get an education. It was for them." The force of my shout finally seemed to puncture her euphoria. Her smile faltered, replaced by a defensive, wounded look. "Don't you see? This is for them too. This is the bigger picture you never want to see. You're so busy pinching pennies and planning for the safe option that you can't see a real opportunity when it's right in front of us. This could set them up for life." "Where is the money, Claire?" I asked, each word a shard of ice. "It's with the company. It's working for us." "Call them, right now. Tell them it was a mistake. We want it back." She laughed, a short, dismissive sound that was more terrifying than any shout. "You can't just get it back. It's an investment. The funds are tied up in inventory and operational..." "Inventory?" I seized on the word. "What inventory?" She gestured to the basement door. "It's downstairs. My kit." I stormed past her and threw open the basement door. There, stacked in neat, glossy boxes that reached nearly to the ceiling, was her investment. Hundreds of boxes of essential oils, meal replacement shakes, detox teas, and magnetic sleep masks. The air was thick with the cloying scent of synthetic lavender and broken dreams. I walked back up the stairs slowly. The fight had gone out of me, replaced by a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight. I looked at the woman I had shared a bed with for 15 years and saw a stranger. "It's a pyramid scheme, Claire," I said, my voice weary. "You bought into a pyramid scheme. The money's gone." Her face hardened. The wounded look vanished, replaced by something cold and resolute. "You just don't believe in me. You never have. You'd rather see me as a fool than as a success. This is why I didn't tell you. I knew you'd be like this. Small, risk-averse. That was the moment the last thread of our marriage snapped. It wasn't the loss of the money, as staggering as it was. It was this, her utter lack of remorse, her complete inability to see the betrayal. She hadn't made a terrible mistake. In her mind, she had made a brilliant move, and I was the villain for not applauding it. She had gambled our children's future on a fantasy sold to her by internet strangers, and all she felt was the insult of my doubt. The trust wasn't just broken, it had been vaporized. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. It was the silence of a chasm opening up, too wide to ever bridge. Claire's expression, that mix of defiance and fervent belief, didn't crack. She simply turned, picked up her gardening gloves, and walked out to the backyard, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the glowing screen of our financial ruin. I didn't sleep that night. I lay rigid on my side of the bed, listening to her breathe evenly, lost in a dream world where she was a platinum-level business mogul. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the numbers. $412.18. I saw Emily's acceptance letter to a state school we could no longer afford. I saw Sarah having to turn down her dream of a private art college. I saw Liam, our bright, curious boy, shackled with the debt I had sworn to spare him. The anger was a live wire, but beneath it was a deeper, more terrifying emotion. Grief. I was mourning the future we had built. I was mourning the woman lying next to me, because the person she was now was a stranger who spoke in cultish mantras and saw our children's security as a necessary risk. The next few days were a torturous dance of avoidance. We moved around each other like ghosts. I'd find her in the basement, on her laptop, headphones on, listening to a mentor preach about breaking free from the 9-to-5 mindset. She'd look up at me with a pitying smile as if I were the one who was lost. I tried, one last time. I sat her down at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd made 1,000 budgets, and I spoke calmly. I showed her articles from the FTC about pyramid schemes. I explained the mathematical impossibility of everyone winning in such a structure. I begged her to see a financial advisor with me, to understand the gravity of what she'd done. She listened, her arms crossed. When I finished, she didn't look at the printouts. She looked at me with a chilling certainty. "Their facts are based on an old broken system, Mark," she said. "Orosphere is creating a new paradigm. You're just scared because you're not in control. You can't stand that I saw this first, that this is my thing. You're trying to sabotage me because you're afraid of my success." That was the moment, the final, irrevocable breaking point. It wasn't the theft, it wasn't the financial illiteracy. It was the profound, unshakable narcissism of it. She had committed an act of catastrophic betrayal against her own family, and she had twisted the narrative so completely that she was the visionary hero, and I was the small-minded villain trying to hold her back. There was no remorse. There was no we. There was only her and her delusion. I looked at her, and I knew with a cold, clear certainty that settled deep in my bones. I could not allow this person to have any sway over my children's lives. I could not risk her taking out a second mortgage on our home for her kit. I could not risk her opening credit cards in their names to fund her business. Her judgment was not just impaired, it was annihilated. The marriage was already over. It had died the moment she typed in that first transfer authorization. That night, after the kids were asleep, I went into my home office and closed the door. I opened a new browser window. The glow of the monitor was the only light in the room. I typed 2 words into the search bar. Divorce lawyer. My hand didn't shake. My heart didn't race. There was only a grim, resolute stillness. This was no longer about anger or hurt feelings. This was a rescue mission. I was a father, and my sole purpose now was to build a seawall between my children and the tsunami of their mother's recklessness. The love was gone, scraped away by the sheer force of her betrayal. What remained was duty. It was enough. It had to be. The courtroom felt less like a hall of justice and more like a sterile, expensive arena where the remains of our marriage would be publicly dissected. Claire sat at the opposite table, her posture perfect, dressed in a new suit she'd undoubtedly bought with a credit card she'd maxed out. She looked every bit the successful entrepreneur she believed herself to be, a stark contrast to the mountain of evidence my lawyer was methodically presenting. My attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Brenda, didn't argue about love lost or irreconcilable differences. She went straight for the jugular, fiscal irresponsibility, and the endangerment of the children's welfare. She entered into evidence the bank statements, the stark columns of transfers draining the college funds dry. She presented printouts from the Orisphere website, its promises of luxury cars and beachside villas looking grotesque next to our emptied accounts. She even entered a photo I'd taken of the basement, a shrine to squandered hopes stacked to the ceiling with boxes of overpriced products. Claire's lawyer, a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, painted a picture of a misguided but well-intentioned spouse who was trying to elevate the family's financial standing. He called it a failed investment, a simple mistake anyone could make. The judge, a weary-looking man with spectacles perched on the end of his nose, listened impassively. He flipped through the documents, his expression growing grimmer with each page. When Claire took the stand, she spoke about her vision and being silenced by a risk-averse husband. She claimed I was trying to control her and stifle her ambition. The judge finally held up a hand, stopping her. He looked from the bank statements to her, then to the picture of the basement. "This was not a failed investment, Mrs. Evans," he said, his voice low but cutting through the room. "This was a catastrophic failure of judgment. This was the unilateral liquidation of educational trusts for a known predatory scheme. The court does not see ambition, it sees recklessness." The gavel came down with a crack that felt final. Primary physical custody of the children was granted to me. Most importantly, the judge granted my petition for sole financial control over all accounts pertaining to the children's welfare and education. Claire was ordered to contribute to new savings plans, but she would have no access to them, no authority, no keys to the vault. We had lost $86,400. But as I walked out of that courtroom, the only thing I felt was the profound, staggering weight of having finally secured what was left. The first stop after leaving the courthouse wasn't home, it was the credit union, a different one from where we'd banked together. The woman behind the plexiglass smiled warmly as I explained what I needed to do. There was no shared history here, no ghost of a drained account. It was a clean slate. I opened 3 new accounts. Their official names were dry, legal things. Custodial 529 plan for the benefit of Emily Evans, and so on. But in my mind, they were the same as the old ones. Emily's future, Sarah's future, Liam's future. The initial deposits were painfully small. A few $100s from what was left of my personal savings after legal fees. It was a seed, and it felt desperately fragile compared to the mighty oak that had been felled. The ritual returned, but its character had changed. The envelope in the filing cabinet was new. The passbooks were digital now, login protected with a password Claire could never guess. Every deposit was an act of defiance. My overtime pay didn't just go into the fund, it was a brick mortared against her recklessness. The birthday checks from grandparents were no longer just gifts, they were reinforcements. The sacrifices were sharper the second time around. The minivan's rattle became a permanent feature. Our vacation was a week camping at a state park. I took on freelance work after the kids were asleep, my eyes straining at the computer screen in the quiet house, the click of the keyboard a lullaby of restitution. The kids, thankfully, were oblivious to the financial recalibration. To them, life was normal. They didn't see the spreadsheets or feel the weight of the second job. They saw a dad who was always there to help with homework, even if he sometimes looked tired. They didn't know that the college fund envelopes had been incinerated and rebuilt from ash. The balances grew, slowly, stubbornly. They wouldn't be what they were. Not for a long time. But they were safe. They were protected. They were real. Each statement was a quiet victory, a message in a bottle I was sending to their future selves. I see you. I haven't forgotten. I will not fail you. The dream wasn't as grand, but its foundations this time were made of steel. Sometimes, in the dead of night, my mind still wanders back to that kitchen table, to the glow of the screen and the 3 identical devastating numbers. The shock has faded, but the scar tissue remains, a permanent, dull ache that reminds me how quickly a life built on trust can crumble. The betrayal wasn't just of me or of our marriage. It was a betrayal of the most sacred duty we have as parents, to protect our children's tomorrow. I learned a brutal lesson in those awful weeks. Love is not enough. Shared history is not enough. A partnership requires a shared reality, and when that fractures, there is no foundation left. Claire chose a fantasy sold to her by slick-talking strangers over the tangible future of her own children. She saw a gamble where I saw a guarantee. In the end, that's the canyon that forever divides us. This journey has been one of quiet resilience. It's in the extra shifts, the skipped comforts, the determined clicking of the transfer button every payday. It's in explaining to the kids, in age-appropriate ways, why mom doesn't live with us anymore, without poisoning their love for her. It's in building a new kind of normal, one that is perhaps less lavish, but infinitely more secure. The new funds will never be the staggering sum they once were, but they are something more important now. They are safe. They are untouchable. They are a promise I have made to myself and to my children, a promise that their dreams will not be another casualty of someone else's delusion. One day, when they are older, I will sit each of them down. I will show them the old statements, the court documents, and then the new growing accounts. I will tell them the hard story of trust broken and a future rebuilt, not to turn them against their mother, but to teach them the profound weight of responsibility and the non-negotiable importance of safeguarding what matters. She gambled with their future on a chance to be rich. I secured it with the certainty of hard work. That's the difference between us. And that is the lesson, carved in heartbreak and paid for in sacrifice, that I will leave them with.